This podcast is the result of my passion for languages and for talking to people. I have conversations with language professionals who are willing to share their experience. We focus on their work, but also on how their love for languages has shaped their personal lives. I started my career as a researcher in terminology, but I found my passion for working directly with clients when I lived in the United States and started working as a language consultant for global companies like Sony, Apple, and Google. When I came back to Europe, I was introduced to the world of LSPs, where I had multiple roles: project manager, vendor manager, and terminologist. Now that I am fully dedicated to my own projects, I provide language services in English and Portuguese, mentoring and consulting for the localization industry, and of course, I'm also a podcaster. Find out more on LinkedIn or Instagram and get in touch if you'd like to explore how I can help you with your projects. I am Rita Prazeres Gonçalves, the language worker. This podcast is also available on YouTube. Hi, everybody. So this time is a second take because I started wrongly, right? Calling Martina. So I was like, no, let me stop here. Let me start again. But now I'm telling you that I'm doing this. So I guess that's how it goes. So it's really great to have Martina here because from what I know, Martina is a digital nomad. She has two well-known companies. She's very active on LinkedIn. So I thought it was going to be a very, very interesting person to bring to the podcast and to have a super relaxed and personal chat about work, right? So that's what we do. So if you could just say a few words about yourself, like somewhat of an introduction.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for, having me on the podcast. Always, nice to have a relaxed chat about work. To me, especially like work, because I combine my passion with work, and we'll talk about that in a minute, I guess. This is all about it's all about having a good time when you're working as well. So yeah, I'm super happy to be here. I am, as you may tell from my accent, I'm Italian, but I have been living everywhere basically for the past, since I was 19. I am now 34, so you can do the math.
Mm-hmm.
I've been living even before I graduated, and I started my business basically on the road. And I am currently in Greece, but I will be moving to Austria in a month for the snowboarding season, like half the season. And as you were mentioning, I do run two agencies, although right now you might have maybe come across me and know me first from my agency called Moving Words, which is where we do localization for SaaS companies. However, my main focus for at least the past year, 100%, has been the company that's called the translation agency called The Action Sports Translator, which obviously where we do translation for outdoor sports and action sports.
Yes. Well, we'll talk about all that because it's amazing. But let's start with the Martina as a child thing, because I'm wondering, was she already very active? Were you already into, radical sports? What was the story? Were you very adventurous, or that came much later in life?
So I was very lucky that I grew up. I was born and grew up in Milan, and my parents took me skiing when I was 3 years old. So I believe I started skiing before I could walk almost. So that was multiple weeks and in winter throughout the year, from whenever the first snow fell. At the time, probably was like at some point in November all the way until the very last end of the season. Like I would spend half of the year like going up and down from the mountains. So that was just kind of my upbringing, and that love was so big. I also did spend all of my summers in the mountains, and my love was so big for the mountains. That's where I felt home the most. And actually, when I was, I think, 18 and, I had my car, or 19, and I got my car, my license, that's something that I wouldn't do now these days, now be more aware of the environment and pollution. But at the time I didn't, because it's so long ago now. So I was just always like, as I was studying and going to university and high school and everything, I was going to, I had like a weird shift in my job, and every Sunday, I think, I finished work. I was working as a waitress at a bar, at a coffee shop. So at night at 1 a.m., I would walk into work with my skis or my snowboard, depending on what I was doing at the time. And I would, do my work shift, and then at 1 a.m. just get in my car, drive all the way to the mountains, get there at 3 a.m. and then, you know, sleep 5 hours, and then spend the next 1.5 days that I had off, and then just ski like non-stop, not even for lunch.
Whoa.
And then just like go back. And that was, you know, went on as long as I was even in Italy. So that's kind of that was
Wow.
like my
Where,
first
where
love.
the action comes from, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was a bit, I guess, crazy, but I loved it. And then when I was 16, I switched to snowboarding from skiing. So I've done half of my life skiing and half of my life snowboarding. And for the past maybe 13 years, I haven't gone back to skiing. So that's kind of been that's my main sport.
Mhm.
But also, you know, I used to do, I guess you call it like practice athletics, like run track, you know, long jump. I was
Mm.
always into sports a lot, like for 15 years. And swimming, there was like a lot of sports, hiking. Yeah, that was kind of my life.
Okay, so when you went to university, it didn't occur to you, or did it, to actually go into some sort of job that had to do more with, you know, physical education, things like that, since you had such a relationship with the subject, or did you study languages? What happened there?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely not. It didn't occur to me because I was never a very good disciplined child. Let's put it that way. So actually, the one thing that I was really good at when I was already like in middle school and, you know, as a child, I was very good with Italian. I had a very good like vocabulary. I was very good with grammar. And
Mm.
so when I finished my high school, I actually learned English when I was 12 years old, maybe, as my class was the only one where we did French for some reason.
Mm.
It's children. And then we moved on to, I learned English. And then I was like, oh, wow, I like this. I'm quite good at this. But then I thought, okay, I'm actually really good at Latin and Italian. So I'm going to do classical studies. And I went on to
Oh,
do, you know, like ancient Greek and all that. And then I did the first year of that. And I was a very rebellious child. And I didn't like it. I was like, wow, this is too much. You know, anyone who's done classical studies can probably understand what I'm talking
yes, yes,
about
yes,
here.
yes, for sure.
It was just like, did you do classical study?
Well, there was a part of it in my life for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so this is like really hardcore and
Yeah.
really required, like, wow, it was crazy. And I was like, okay, I'm not, you know, disciplined. I don't like authority. I don't like people telling me that I've got like to do all this stuff, and I have got to study so much stuff that I don't really care about. And so that became something that I didn't like. And I actually sort of decided to fail my first year at high school. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to now move on to a high school where we study modern languages.
Mm.
And that's where I found my passion, where I didn't have to study. Somehow I was good at it.
Mm.
So then, you know, that became my like my thing, where okay, I knew that I wanted to do something with languages. But then, because I was very rebellious,
Yeah.
I didn't like to have to study. Like I didn't like having to study. I liked learning, but not having to study, which is
Mm.
in my brain was two very
Yes,
different things.
I totally get it. Trust me, I totally get it.
And I guess, you know, it came from the fact that I had a bit of a difficult relationship at home, like with my one of my parents. And so I think that's where the rebellious thing came from. And so as soon as I was 19, I was like, I'm out of here. I didn't want to go and study anymore, do any more like universities or anything like that. And I moved to Germany straight away, thinking, because I spoke, you know, German, I could get like a good job. You know, I was like, I don't know, 19 years old. What sort of good job am I going to get? So I did end up working at restaurants and all sorts. And it was a nightmare because I'm not very good at that. I'm good at talking to people, but I'm not very
There's
good
like
at,
schedules and things like that. So
yeah. First, I had no social life. You know, you're working
Mm.
like, I don't know how many hours a day. And then it was just not very, it's not my calling. I'm not a good waitress. But,
I
you know,
hear you.
it was an easy thing to do at the time. And then I think I went back for some reason to Italy. And then my grandma, she told me that there was this university right behind her place, like behind where she lived, which did something with translation and interpreting. And I was like, oh, that seems cool.
Was this
And
in
at the time,
Milan?
yeah, Milan. So it's actually a quite famous university in Milan. And then I was like, oh, this is actually quite interesting. And on the same day, I got a job at the national airline in Italy. So I was like, okay, well, you know, I'm going to stay now back in Italy. I think it was like a year or a year and a half after I had left. So I'm going to stay here. I'm going to start this job. And then I'm going to start it at this university. I'm going to take on translation and interpreting and communication. So there was translation, interpreting, and marketing, basically, as
Mhm.
the three topics, like main topics.
Mm.
And so that's what I did. But at the time, it was a private university and I had to pay for it myself. So with the job that I had, it was not enough to pay for that. Italy is very like a low paying country. So I ended up having like 3 jobs and, just sleeping 2 hours, leaving Red Bulls, not recommended. If you're listening to this, you're starting out, don't do this. It's like, yeah. So yeah. And then I just like did university. And then because of that, so my story is a little bit probably different than many people because then my university bachelor's degree was supposed to take 3 years, I think. But I was 1.5 years into it and I couldn't make enough money to pay for it with
Right.
2 jobs or 3 jobs.
Yeah.
And actually, even before I graduated, I got a first translation client as at the airport. That was like, I was, checking in this passenger and, speaking German. And this guy, we live having a chat. And then this guy said, we're always looking for translators. So I got my first freelance clients even before graduating.
Yeah.
And then I decided, okay, I remember being like 21 years old and waking up and being like, wow, I am so stressed because I don't have enough money to pay for my university, my rent, and all of this, and the petrol for my car, like because I have to go up and down, and there is no way to use public transport. And so I made a decision, and even though I was not supposed to do it based on the rules of the university, I went up to the principal and I said, look, I either stay in Italy and I cannot pay for this university and I have to give it up, or because I'm already working 3 jobs, like how many more jobs can I work? Or I just do it from the distance and I move to a better paying country and then I come back and I do I do my tests. And she was like, if that's the only way you do it. And so that's what I did. And I moved first to Germany and then to Switzerland. And I was working at different cafes again and like, pubs. It was a very depressing time. And then I went back and I did all my tests and I passed. It was really difficult. But it took me a bit long. It took me like 4 years, I think, to get it done instead of the 3 years. Or maybe 5 instead of 4. I can't remember now. Yeah. And that was kind of it. That's kind of how I did
it. And then you were like, okay, now I have this degree. And what happened?
But the funny thing is, because before I got my degree, actually, it took me 5 years instead of 3, because the actual studying and doing all of the tests took me 4 years. But then the very last test that I was supposed to take before then graduate, like preparing for the graduation, defending my thesis, was I didn't pass it. He did study for it, I remember, and I didn't pass it. And then I was like, okay, well, now I have to pay for another year of my university tuition. What am I going to do? I'm just going to go off. And I went and I moved to Southeast Asia with no money. I just moved to Southeast Asia because I thought, let's just make this time worthwhile, because otherwise I'm just going to be wasting away like in Milan. I hate this city. I don't like to be here. So I did that. I just had this crazy boyfriend. So I went there. And instead of traveling, obviously, I was trying to start a business, because how am I going to sustain myself here now? And I'm not, I'm not working anymore here in Italy. So I was like sitting all day, just, I had very little understanding of how business works. So I had to learn copywriting, marketing, how to create your own business, like your own website. And so I spent months and months and months constantly fine-tuning, recreating this website. And then one day I remember I was sitting at this hostel. It was like in Cambodia. And I received this email from this translation agency saying like, yeah, we would love to work with you. And at the time, I think it was for like a telecom. That was like my very first specialization. It was like more like IT software.
Yeah.
And I actually sort of specialized in Swiss Italian because I was living in Switzerland, and I'm from Milan, so it's kind of similar already. But because I was living in Switzerland, people were finding me and they wanted to work with me, and so that was my first specialization, like Swiss Italian for IT and software, and that was what it was for a long time. Kind of that was the main thing.
As a freelancer or as already a company? What was your first?
As a freelancer, yeah. This must have been back in 2014, I believe, which is when I started to, work properly as a freelance translator with a VAT and register business. And I was already doing a little bit of work, before that. But this was like a proper, okay, wow, now I'm working for an agency. Yeah. So that's now 10 years ago. Crazy. To think. Yeah, and then it kind of like went on there, and I really hustled hard to get more and more clients, really always getting better at what I'm doing. And I kind of, because in my degree I had communication and marketing, I naturally fell into marketing translations.
Mhm.
And let's be honest, a lot of people when they start out, and maybe even experienced translators, they will say that they do marketing translation, but it's actually really hard. When you start
Yes, I
out,
know.
you are probably very, like, not you, but like anyone who's starting
Yeah.
out is probably very bad at the beginning. Like, you
Mhm.
don't know what marketing translation actually entails. You don't get it, right? It takes a long time to get good at it.
Mhm.
um, yeah, and then I kind of went on, and as a freelancer, I was always doing a lot of translations for marketing purposes, and that included a lot of different things like coffee machines, sofas, beds, like all sorts of stuff. But my main focus was the Swiss market.
Mhm.
Until I had to go back to Italy because of a tragedy that we had in my family, and I kind of was stuck in Italy for a bit. Um, and I didn't work. It put me out of work for like 6-7 months because I was just like mentally
Wow. Of
not ready. I
course.
couldn't work anymore. And then the very first job request that I got after I was ready to work again
Mhm.
was sorry, someone that I had met back in Zurich, like all those years earlier,
Uh-huh.
who wanted me to help them with translations into multiple languages, and for
Ah.
a client who is in actually the action sports industry. But at the
Wow.
time, we still work with this client today, and it's like, been now, I think, 8 years. But
Wow.
at the time, I didn't think, oh, maybe I'm going to specialize in that
It's
industry.
natural that you don't think that, right? It
I
is very
didn't.
particular. It's very specific.
Yeah. I thought, you know what? I really like SaaS, like software as a service. I think it's a really good industry. I like it. So I'm going to pivot now, and I'm going to, like, first, we were doing a little bit of translations. It was just me managing a team of a bunch of, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 people.
Mhm.
Whatever clients needed some translation into multiple languages, I was, managing that, very amatorial, like very
Mhm.
rudimental sort of like setup.
So you were like a freelance project manager, right, at that time?
I mean, kind of. We can put it that way, I guess. Yeah, I was just like a freelancer working with a team of additional people, like doing
Mhm. Oh,
that.
so you were also doing the linguistic work
Yeah, I was also like
and you were
doing
managing.
the
Mhm.
translations myself. I was checking actually what people were doing because I can be quite annoying. Like, I'm a bit like, I'm always checking. So I was doing that, like very sort of chilled, easy sort of setup. And it was okay for what it was. And then it sort of kind of grew a little bit. And then I thought, wait a second, marketing translation is actually not a specialization, is a broad thing, it's a service.
Mhm.
And if I am now providing marketing translation services, even with a team, to all these different types of businesses, I am casting a very wide net. And it's very difficult to create, a good, I don't know, brand or presence for that. And
Of
at the
course.
time, I
Mhm.
already had quite a lot of presence online. I've always been very, people like everywhere. And so that's when I decided to pivot the entire branding into, and that was 2018. No, 2000 yeah, I think it was like 2016 when I started the agency, Moving Words. And
Moving
then
words.
over the next couple of years, I slowly pivoted it into like SaaS localization. And then, like, did the whole rebranding, the website, and all of that. And then we started getting like immediately some really like focused clients for that
Mhm.
industry. And at the same time, in 2018, so exactly 5 years and 1 month ago, because it was December, then 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I also got into climbing very heavily, and right now it's like
Yes. That's I've seen lots of photos of you climbing.
yeah, exactly. I really started like getting really like a lot into climbing. My partner like is super, really good climber, so I really started traveling literally like the world just to climb. So I kind of
Mhm.
became
So
like
that's when you started being like a digital nomad, right? So it was like contemporary to creating the company and then moving all the time, or what was the story there?
not
What was it
really.
happening? No.
So that was kind of from the very beginning, because when I got my very first freelance client, when I already was 19, I was already doing that online. So
Mhm.
that was already sort of like building in the background. And then I believe this must have been 2015. Before graduating, I moved to a small town on Garda Lake. And that's when I stopped doing any, like before I was still working to, you know, like moving place to work locally.
Mm-hmm.
But in 2015, I moved to this place because my then boyfriend was into kite surfing, and I think he got at the time like a
You
job as
only
a
want radical people around you. People who are into sports,
exactly.
action
So
sports.
I think at the time, if I'm not mistaken, he had gotten a job as a kite surf instructor,
Mm.
and so I moved there just, you know, to hang out there because I just didn't want to be in Milan. I didn't like it. I just moved, and no, this must have been, sorry, it must have been way earlier than 2015. I'm mistaken here. Because 2015 is when we had my dad basically got involved in an accident, and that's why I had to
Oh.
go back to Italy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this must have been around 2013 then. It must have been at least a couple of years before when I moved to this town, and I just completely stopped doing any other work. And I was then, it must be like between those 2 years where I stopped doing any other work and I just focused on the translation side.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it was after, it was either after or before the whole Southeast Asia. It's so long ago now, and I've been in so many places.
I can only imagine.
But yeah, it was like around that time, right? So yeah, I did that, and then it just like grew from there. And you know, I think it was actually before Southeast Asia, I believe. So I think it was before Southeast Asia and South America. It was the two main things there before I was in this Italian town, and then I moved away and I went there. So that was kind of when it started. But then, because then when I moved back to Italy because of, you know, my dad's accident,
Mm-hmm.
I got stuck in Italy for 3 years, and I was going crazy. After 3 months in Milan, I was like literally losing my mind. And so I thought, okay, I can't do this. I need to, you know, obviously be near my family. And so I decided to move to the Alps, where I
Mm-hmm.
sort of grew up. So that was and so that also, like, I was running a business from there, and that was way early, like way before running the company or starting the company.
Mm-hmm.
At least 1 or 2 years before starting the company. And then what did I do? Yeah, so in 2018, so what happened was that I was really into climbing at the time. I just really got into it. So I was addicted to climbing. Anyone listening to this who's into climbing understands what I'm talking about. Really good.
Which I
Hooked.
don't, obviously. I believe you, but I don't understand. I'm afraid of heights.
I was super hooked. And so I think at the time I went on to buy a pair of climbing shoes online, and I was like floored and shocked by the really like crappy quality, pardon my French, of translations and
Yeah.
like obviously translated content, you could tell, or like even multilingual content. The quality was so bad on a lot of the companies that I checked, and I was like, wow, there is something maybe that needs to be done here. And then I looked around and I couldn't really find any maybe specialized translation provider. There was a couple of maybe smaller teams that were offering the service, like maybe I was doing with like Moving Words previously, but no real proper like translation service agency, like really catering to the industry.
Yeah, I never heard about it. Yeah. And I've been here for a while.
Yeah. And then after a couple of weeks, I think that I had to get more removed under my foot. And so I was stuck at home in crutches, and I was getting so bored. I couldn't go skiing. I couldn't go climbing. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to put this time that I'm stuck at home on crutches to good use. And I'm going to set up a business, which is going to cater to the outdoor industry. And so I spent 1 week just working 24/7 to come up with the branding name, which at the time I didn't think about it. I was like, I'm just going to quickly call it the Action Sport Translator. It's a bit long. I will think about something better later. I'm just going to come up with something like a minimum viable product, just something that works. Created a website by myself, then hired a copywriter for, I think, 500 euros and got him to, like, it was a one-pager, super simple website, and to create the copy for that or fix what I had created. And then I decided that after my mole removal surgery was healed, the next week I would fly to Germany and go to a trade show for the outdoor industry, and I would go there with this website and see if there was, a market for that.
Wow.
So that's how it happened.
Wow. And it was there, right? The market.
It's been crazy because when I first flew there, I didn't really think this through. I didn't have a big team. I just knew a few people, so I put them together. and I flew there. I met one of the translators there actually, and then we got our very first client from there. I didn't even have that much of a game plan. I just thought I'm gonna put a team of people together like I did previously, and we're gonna go and like offer the best translation service for the outdoor industry that the industry has ever seen. So we got a first client there. You know, at the time it was still a little bit like not a very structured approach.
Right.
And then for the first year, I didn't really have time to work a lot on this company because I was working on all of my other stuff. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cough. And yeah, and then within the first, year, I would say the first year was quite quiet. And then so that was end of 2018. So first year was 2019. At the end of 2019, I didn't do anything during this year. The only thing that I did was reach out to a couple of companies or like smaller brands to say, hey, I'm building this. Can I do some translations work for you for free? And in turn, you let me use it as part of my portfolio and the logo.
Right.
That was a win-win situation for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I gave them very clear terms and they were like, yeah, sure. Fun fact, two of these brands, the two ones that I reached out to, one of them I'm still very good friends with. And this is now 5 years ago, and the other one is now a paying customer. So,
I believe you. I believe you. That makes sense.
the pays off. So within the first like 12 months, we were found on Google by the likes of Salomon and O'Neill, like really big companies.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly we went from having like zero or like very, very little work because we didn't put any, or I didn't put any effort or marketing into this, to having this massive major project, like hundreds of thousands of words in like 5 languages. And I was like, whoa, okay. So I got very busy very quickly. And the past
So
5
that's
years,
when you didn't do any language work, I suppose, because you had to manage all of this stuff.
I think I was still doing some of the Italian. I've always been very like particular with the quality that we put out. So I think at the time I was still working on the Italian whenever it was included in the project. But then, then the next year, I think is when we got then like a really big project. Like this was already big accounts, but then we got a third client that was like really, really big. And they had some very like, I'm actually quite surprised that I managed to sell, because at the time I didn't have that much experience, selling to these companies, and we're talking like really big deals as well. So somehow I managed to sell it. And then very quickly I had to hire our first project manager, who, fun fact, at the time I was climbing in this climbing hotspot in Spain, and I was living in the van full time with my partner and our pets. And it was like there is a place, like an area where all the vans climbers were all like sort of parked together, and then we have our bags and we just walk. And it sort of like creates a community there. And one day I was sitting outside, just like typing away furiously on my laptop. And I used to also have a business called Freelancer at Work. Maybe people listen
It's
to the podcast,
stickers, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I was making stickers that, for translators and freelancers, which I now don't have anymore. Just too many things to take care of. And I had one outside on my laptop, and I was like working, and this couple walking outside of their van saw me, and they were like, "Oh, you're a translator." So the guy said, "Oh, I'm also a translator, a Brazilian Portuguese translator," and she is like, "Oh, I'm also a translator." And then it turns out that she actually used to be senior translation project manager at TransPerfect. But then she then quit the job. She worked there for like 5 years, and now she was working, like me, as a freelancer translations. And I was like, "Look, I've got this major account just and landed in my lap. One of the languages was Brazilian Portuguese that we had to translate into. I need someone because I can't possibly handle these 2 massive accounts plus this third one by myself." And she was like, "Yeah, let's talk." And she's actually, I can't believe how lucky I was, because she's amazing. We've been working there for like 3 years. And she's absolutely incredible, and one of like the best professionals that I've ever like met in my life. And he's been Brazilian Portuguese translator for this account now for like 3 years.
Wow.
So, yeah, and that sort of like kick started the whole thing. And from there it hasn't really been like it hasn't stopped. It's just every year we just almost double our project project size, project income. The team is getting bigger, so and now we have like a really big it's like super structured approach as well. We're getting projects, we're getting clients are coming to us, and we are winning requests for proposals from big agencies like TransPerfect, and not from, but like against, like we are awarded the project instead of them. Like, this is crazy. I used to be exploited by them. So,
well, I've worked there, so
yeah, there you go. You know what it's like, right?
I was a project manager for 2 years for TransPerfect. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. So you know what I'm talking about.
I know everything you're talking about.
Yeah. So also when I say that my project manager used to work for 5 years, like I can't believe how lucky I was that she was my project. Yes. My
because if you have been a project manager for TransPerfect, it's like you've been a project manager for 100 years, because the time multiplies many times.
Exactly. And then my second project manager, I also hired her, I think, the summer of the same 2020. So it was kind of like, every 6 months we got a new project manager at the beginning. And but she was actually supposed to work on moving words, because we also did have clients working in that. And then the Translator just kept growing, and then she sort of started dividing her time between them two, until it got to the point that we needed one more person to come in, plus a vendor manager. And then I think the following year we decided with the second project manager that she wasn't really into action sports. It didn't make sense, right? So it was kind of not gonna work in the long run, because if you're not in that culture, it's a bit difficult to fit in. And so I started myself dividing my time equally between moving words and the action sport translator. And then over time, I just felt like I started losing my soul and my voice. And then we got these really big accounts and big projects for moving words as well. And I just started to dread them. I didn't enjoy them anymore. And then what happened last year with this big tech layoffs, and people getting fired in the SaaS industry. A lot of our contacts got fired. And then I was just a bit disgusted by the whole industry. And I decided, you know what, I'm just going to take a step back from this industry. We still have some clients, but I'm not going to put any effort into this anymore. If we do get leads, I'm going to, pass them over to a trusted competitor, so to speak. Someone that I know that is going to do a good job, or maybe we're going to white label. I don't know. And I'm going to put 110% of my time into the action sport translator instead. And last year was crazy. This year I started by how many days? 12 days. I am already scared. It's blowing up. And now we have, I think, 5 project managers, hiring 3 more, maybe an additional vendor manager for Asian languages. And, we have a content manager for copy and content writing projects. It's just crazy.
Wow. I see.
It's very hectic.
But at the same time that all of this is happening, other things are happening, right? Because you are always moving, right? So how do you decide where you're going to go next, and how does that come about, knowing that you have to focus so much on your projects?
Yes. So for the past 2 years, I would say that my free time has gone to 0. But what I try to incorporate that with my schedule. So sometimes if I know that I can, I don't have to do maybe super intensive work, and maybe I just need to reply to emails and stuff, I will take my laptop to the crag climbing, and maybe I will belay because when you climb, you have to be 2 people, and I have to basically, manage the rope for my partner who's climbing. He's basically, you cannot climb unless I'm there. So I will belay him. That's how we say it in technical jargon. I will belay him with the rope. And then once he comes down, I will on my laptop, do the meeting, send my emails, and then maybe I'll try to find a time to squeeze in one climb. So it's not ideal, to be fair. But I probably put on 10 kilos in the past 2 years, just because of, very little time, a lot of stress. It's
because you always keep the rope instead of climbing.
Yeah, just exactly. I mean, to be honest, managing an agency is not for the faint of hearted.
Yes.
find of art. It's very, 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 very hard work, and it's very stressful. So many decisions. I've like a lot of the time I turn to stress eating, and because I'm not moving as much anymore, I'm just like, a bit of a. But it's okay. I mean, it's part of the game, and it's just about getting to the point where you can scale it and not be so involved in it anymore. And that's what I'm trying to do. I like to be involved in it, but not to the point where it's making me, sick potentially. So, and then also I try to, in the weekends as well, try to put in as much as I can, and maybe in the evening, or I try to make it work. And the good thing is that because I work in the outdoor industry, clients don't give a crap if I show up and I'm taking my meetings from my van. I'm recording this from my van, by the way. Like I'm doing this with you from my van. Or I am, I just came back from a climb and I've got chalk all over my face.
Everything is in context, right? So I suppose they're happy to see you
They
doing
actually have
what you
to, yeah.
preach, right?
Exactly. They're like, oh wow, she's actually one of us. So okay, that actually works. That's the selling for me. So it's actually better.
Yeah.
But on top of that, I do have 3 cats and I have 2 dogs.
Yes, I was going to talk about that because I cannot help talking about that because, of course, I have, I had 6 cats, but one of them passed away. So I have now 5 cats. So anyone who has a lot of animals calls my attention, obviously. So I've known about, some of the adventures that you have had. I think you have this client that works with a bit of a GPS system that you have in the collars of your animals. So I remember you talking about that and how you used it because I guess you almost lost one of your furry babies, and then that device really helped you, right? So there's all sorts of funny stories also about traveling with those animals.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't actually not one of our clients because this is actually a company that okay, actually, let me take a
You guys support, maybe, not necessarily
no,
a client.
it's a different story for altogether. But wait, before I go there, I forgot to mention, because your question was, how do you move around and how do you decide where to go?
Yeah.
I forgot about that part. We mainly do climbing and snowboarding. So that's the 2 main sports that we do. And I'm trying to pick up kite surfing. So basically we just go according to the season, meaning that, and also like what I don't like to do, I don't like, I actually don't like the term digital nomad because people have weird labels and like sort of peer pressure. I don't like that. I like to do whatever makes me feel good. So what we do, we typically move and we stay in the same place for several months. Like now we're in Greece usually we're in Greece for, 5 months or so at the end of the year and then the beginning of the new year.
So what's in Greece that takes you there? Is it some sort of a mountain that it's very specific, or why that? Because I don't know what I'm saying, but maybe you can climb, I suppose, in many places, right? So why do you particularly enjoy that place, for example? And I know that you were in Portugal some time ago, maybe a year and a half ago or so, and you were probably also climbing. I'm not sure.
I was just there now for 4 months this summer as well.
Oh.
I just came here. So we moved from Portugal to Spain. We stopped in Spain for 2 months or 1 month and a half, and then moved on to Greece. And I'm now going to move on to Austria in a month. Basically, different climbing places, different countries have different climbing styles, different climbing rocks and quality. And then each place has different seasons. For example, Greece is very good for winter climbing because the weather is sort of good. Usually now it's actually a cold spell, but it doesn't usually go below like 10 degrees. It's good to climb here. You can actually ski in Greece as well, which is what we do a lot of the time. We're actually going to go snowboarding tomorrow, ski touring just like on the hill up here. Because we don't want to drive all the way like to the resorts, which is quite far. But that's kind of the main reason. And also like here, there is a lot of rock. It's a lot of climbing, really high quality, and it's a big community. So we have a lot of friends. And that's the same thing, and it's very good for van life as well. Although we do also have an apartment because we have all these pets, and you can see my cat sleeping there in my van.
Yeah.
It's difficult otherwise. And then normally in my ideal world, I would also do a ski season. However, right now, you can't do both at the same time. Greece is nice. I've been snowboarding here in Greece for the past maybe 4 years, but I'm a little bit bored of the first world problems. I know, but it's a big hill. It's not the Alps, so I'm a little bit bored of that. And that's why I'm now going to move to Austria for half of the season. So the second part of the season, I'm going to be skiing there until I can, until the conditions allow. And then in summer, I have no idea what we're going to be doing. We usually change it up a little bit. Last summer, So we were in Portugal. The summer before, we were in Bulgaria for 4 months. Because it was, you've got like lots of forests and it's just like a different country. It's just fun. So it kind of depends really on what we want to do. And as far as the cats go, yes, because we travel so much, we use all sorts of things. Of course, you have to get them microchipped.
Of course.
All that, the
Like
passports.
everybody else, but then
Yeah, my cats have more passports than I do, which is funny. Some of them have dual citizenship. So,
I know I have an American cat too. So
exactly. And then, but they also, because when we go around, so they come hiking with me sometimes. So, and when we pick places which are safe for them every time, even with the van. Like now, if I let them out, is because, I am around and there is no cars here. Like this is a very, very safe. So I always make sure that whenever we go and we do let them out, first of all, we are aware of the environment. And we check what they're doing, and also it's safe. But just in case, they do have a GPS collar. And my cats are petfluencers. They're quite famous. They have, I think, 12,000 followers on Instagram.
Wow.
I stopped pushing their account maybe 2 years ago. It became a full-time job. I just don't have time for that. But because of that, we do get some free stuff. Like we did get some free GPS trackers and from both the two main companies on the market in Europe, and some free subscriptions. So that's how we work with them sometimes. But then, we just pay. It's just like a normal device that we use. So.
Right. No, I just find the device situation very interesting, because I know a lot of people probably don't know that it exists, or we can imagine that it exists, but we don't know where or where to look for and all of that stuff. My cats stay at home, so I don't really have a device. They have the microchip, but I don't have a device. They're all home, and now they've never been out, so I guess they wouldn't be.
It's easier, just keep them inside. It's just because we rescued all of these. They all, they were all outdoor cats, and we like found them outside. One of them, I found him in the Alps. The other ones, and I took him from Italy with me. The other two we rescued as they were small in Greece. They're it's very difficult to confine them in a van. So, we also like leash walk them if it's not safe. So it's like, it's a bit. I actually, at the time when I got, in 2019, I officially moved away from the Alps and into my partner's van at the time. And we were traveling full time and living in the van for 2 years. I started a blog called The Nomad Cats. And I was like, writing blog posts, and I didn't really have a plan. Like I was like, I'm just going to document this whole thing. And then I hired someone to write some blog content, because I thought, oh, maybe I can get some ads and monetize this. But then again, it's just like I didn't know anything about writing blog content. I knew a little bit, of course, about SEO because of my translation work, but it was very far from knowing, and I obviously didn't have time for that. So, but for a while, I did get some ads and some monetization, some payment through that. So that was quite fun.
Wow. Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
So this is wow, right? All the things that you do, I suppose that's why people really find interesting everything that you post on LinkedIn. That's where I follow your work, but apparently you also have Instagram accounts and all of those things going on, or because it's hard to keep up with so many things, right? Profiles and stuff like that. So I would say, I guess we got the gist of it, but it's always hard because if you're always moving, then we probably have to catch up next year or something to see where things are. But sounds great. I'm like, oh my God. And I know that a lot of people who are interested in action sports are now obviously, working with you, trying to work with you and all that stuff. I guess my friend Maria Virginia recently connected with you and all that stuff. I guess we had a conversation about that, and then she ended up talking to you. That was really funny. So yeah, I guess
Okay, nice. Yeah, she's working with us for one of our main accounts. So she's been like the Portuguese translator.
I've been watching now action sports content because she tells me about it, and I'll go and check it out. And of course, in Portugal, you have
surfing.
I don't know anything. I don't know anything about anything. However, the thing is that right near where I live, there's the biggest wave in, I don't know, Portugal or Europe or whatever.
It's not too far away,
So it's probably 30 kilometers.
Love it.
Yeah, so I guess it's kind of a relevant thing. We have a lot of content about surfing and things like that, like the national stuff, but I don't know anything about it, so it's not possible for me to discuss the subject with you. But all of a sudden I started watching things specifically because of of the subtitling and all of that part that is involved. So I mean, you have clients that ask you for all sorts of jobs, right? It's not only websites, things like that. You also have subtitling, things like that, right? So I guess
It's
it's the
also
subject and then you do everything around
and
it. So
yeah, and then it's like a lot of different content types, subtitling, app localization, user experience, product descriptions. It's like a lot, a lot of stuff. And actually, for anyone who's listening these to this, we currently work with, I think, 450 translators. We're currently heavily recruiting. We do mainly work with mountain and winter sports, so that's kind of our focus. So I think at the end of the next couple of months, we will have maybe 500 to 600 translators that we work with. But if you are into action sports and you're like getting a light bulb in your head and like, oh my god, I can do this, I can actually do translations for action sports, for my sports I love, our doors are open. So I'm gonna do like a shameless plug from our website now. You can always go onto our website, which is of course www.theactionsportstranslator.com, and you go onto the join the team, basically it's like careers page, and you will find some forms that you can just drop your details in, and so make sure that it's an action.
however, if you don't know anything about it, right, like you always say in your posts, if you don't know
God,
anything about it, then don't apply.
yeah, I mean, today I posted something for a copywriter. We're looking for copywriters for two like big copywriting projects for mountain and winter sports. And in my post, I wrote, because I'm not responsible for hiring. I have a big network. So I write the post on LinkedIn and I will say, please follow this link, drop your details there, and do not contact me privately. Guess how many people contact me privately and didn't follow the link or send me an email? Like, don't do that.
That's what happens to anyone who posts a job, right? If you have nothing to do with it, then it's not your case, obviously, because you have something to do with it. But even if you have nothing to do with it, then people will like DM you to ask you questions and things like that. Well, I love this is a new moment in the podcast where we have a recruitment session going on. I love it. I mean, it's a brand new thing. So yeah, this is going out, like I said, very soon, so that it's still current. So when you guys watch it, when it comes out, it's still current. You can still apply and you can visit the website and all of that stuff. So I know you're super busy. I know you have rocks to climb and everything else, cats to feed, all sorts of things. So I'll let you go. Thank you so much for this. That was really fun. And I guess everybody, a lot of the people that I know follow you and love your content and know that you recruit people constantly. And you always say, if you're not into action sports, don't do it. I mean, I couldn't do it because I'm a bit of a couch potato in that sense. I mean, I don't move, I don't do anything. So I'm not good for you. Therefore, I'm not joining. But
yeah,
yes,
I mean,
for sure. I only do the talking. That's all I do. That's my muscle, the muscle that I work.
perfect. It works. Now, it's been really awesome talking to you. I mean, yeah, it's like I said, anyone who's into action sports and professional translator, feel free to reach out. And in the channel, as I said, not to me personally, but via the channel. And yeah, and also, if people want to follow us and see what we're up to, you can basically just type in the action sports translator into Google, and we're everywhere. So
yeah, or we'll also post a link. Anything it will happen, right? For sure, because people want to join you, I suppose. Very nice.
Awesome.
Very nice to see you for the first time live. Like we've spoken before, but we've exchanged messages, but we have never talked really. So next time you come to Portugal, maybe there's a chance that we can grab some coffee, or I go meet you in the middle of nowhere, wherever you are, to get to know your cats and all of that good stuff. Well, thank you so much. And well, we'll see you around. Always moving, but always around. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.